Welcome to Maritime Matters, a podcast focused on leaders in the maritime market, the people, the companies, the technologies that are making and breaking the news, helping to lead the maritime industry to a safer, more efficient, more profitable, and cleaner future. Welcome aboard. So, welcome to the Maritime Matters, the MarineLink Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Troutwine, the editor and publisher of Maritime Reporter and Engineering News for more than 30 years. We have an amazing guest list today to discuss in-depth Green Marine, which is a leading environmental certification program for North America's maritime industry. It's a voluntary initiative designed to help participants improve their environmental performance beyond the regulation. So joining us today are a trio of executives that are here to share their experiences, their successes, and their challenges. We have Eleanor Kirtley, the Green Marine Senior Program Manager. We have Stephanie Jones Stebbins, the Director, Maritime, Port of Seattle. And last but certainly not least, we have Mark Barker, President and CEO of the Interlake Steamship Company. To start us off, I'd like to set the stage, and I'd really like to get that 50,000 foot view before we start getting to the granular detail. So Eleanor, I think you're best suited for that big picture overview of Green Marine. As I've noted at the outset, I've been covering the maritime market for more than 3 decades. And until recently, I would have said that companies leverage the green label were doing so more for a marketing purpose than the enactment of real systemic changes to their businesses and operations. So to start us off, can you give an overview of Green Marine? When and why it was started, plus a by the numbers look at where you are today.
Sure. Thanks, Greg, and thanks for having us on. I think the why we started was really, in large part, this perception that you're talking about, that some green measures were not really truly backed by concrete actions, that Green Marine was founded to be able to really advance the industry with accountability, with transparency, working with stakeholders, working with regulators, working with communities as a way to really gain trust to maintain commerce. We started on the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway region, so binational, bilingual from the start. Mark may remember those founding days better than I, back in 2007, really combating the issue of aquatic invasive species proliferating from the introduction and spread from ballast water discharges. So Green Marine was founded to take on a breadth of environmental initiatives to report on environmental performance on an annual basis. Those results get verified by one of our third-party accredited verifiers for our participants to earn their certification. That annual cycle culminates in our Green Tech Conference, held every year in June. We just held our 17th annual last month. By the numbers, we now have over 500 member organizations within the newly incorporated Green Marine International. That's inclusive of the US, Canada, and Green Marine Europe. They have offices out of France. And then the original founding office is in Quebec City. We have an office in St. John's, Newfoundland, and then I am based here in Seattle, Washington, having opened up our US West Coast office a year after the Port of Seattle that Stephanie will remember joined in 2013. So I've been in this role for the last 10 years.
Just really quick, Eleanor, how the annual meeting? I've never been. I've wanted to attend. How was it this year?
Another record-setting year, very much a success. We're seeing continued growth in programs membership, also attendance at the Green Tech Conference. Those who have been around from the very beginning, so amazing to have that kind of annual reunion with friends and colleagues. But of course, there's also new people coming in and mobility within the industry. But I think we do a really fantastic job pulling together a speaker program. Those efforts start, 9 months before the actual program, with a call for speakers, making sure that the programming is very relevant in terms of regional specific, but also of an international appeal, with a nice balance of technical tracks, but also networking events like a brewery tour at the end. And we always like to host it in a very attractive city. We were in Halifax This year, we'll alternate back to the US for 2025, where we'll be in New Orleans.
Like I said, before we dig deeper and get into the granular detail, I just want everyone to have the opportunity to introduce their organization and kind of where they're coming from on this whole green marine path. So, Mark, I'm certain that most watching this, they better know, and listening, know the Interlake Steamship Company. But can you give us a brief overview of your organization with insight on how you came to align with green marine and the tangible impact that you've seen so far on your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Great to be with you. We're Interlake Steamship is a U.S. Jones Act operator on the Great Lakes. We operate 10 ships. I got to make sure that's right. But we operate self-unloading bulk carriers. So we're moving what we like to call the building blocks of America, the raw materials, iron ore, stone, other materials on the Great Lakes. And we do that through self-unloading carriers, ships ranging from 1,000 feet in length down to 39 feet in length. And so we're moving, we move alone about 20 million tons of raw materials a year. Our industry is moving over 70 million tons a year in raw materials. So we do that in 9 months of the season because the winter gets a little cold and icy up here. And so we operate in 9 months of the season. So it's a unique operating environment in the Great Lakes. I think we've been we got involved in green marine. I think we've been aware of it. We were actually in early discussions around the founding of it, but we didn't really join it until later. And that was just trying to understand the framework and understanding, what was green marine doing from the early onset. But we as a company, I think, we're taking a lot of initiatives around the environment and our impact on the environment. And we always had very close ties with Green Marine and its members, and always a great relationship. And then it finally, as we are doing all these things, we did a lot of environmental initiatives in our fleet, and at some point it just made sense. Should we do this, and should we be reporting it, measuring it, and doing it in a transparent way? And that's that really came to the conversation internally with our team and saying, hey, we're already doing all this stuff, good stuff. How do we measure it? How do we be transparent about it? And how do we do it in the right way? Because I think you kind of mentioned it. People talk about green initiatives. They talk about it, and they like to label themselves as doing it. But at the end of the day, it has to be third-party verified. It has to be transparent. And so to do those things, that's really what finally got us involved directly in green marine. As we develop our long-term strategies, it aligns very much with a lot of green marine initiatives. And so it really goes hands in hand and lets us measure and be accountable internally and externally with our stakeholders.
And I appreciate that. And actually, one of my highlights in the last few years was when I was out in Cleveland for the christening of your namesake ship. And as you can see on the swag behind me, I'm a fellow Buckeye. I've lived in New York for 30 something years, but I still have Buckeye roots long and strong. So again, I appreciate that insight. So Stephanie, I'm just going to say that we saved the best for last. So can you talk a little bit about your role in the Port of Seattle with a brief overview of the organization and insight on how you came to align with Green Marine and the tangible impact that you've seen?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for that question, Greg. So my name is Stephanie Jones Stebbins. I'm the managing director of the Maritime Division at the Port of Seattle. So the Port of Seattle is it's a diverse port authority. As we all know, every port is different. What we have here at Port of Seattle, the Seattle Tacoma International Airport, and then our maritime holdings are diverse as well. In our Marine Division, which I lead, we have a cruise business, the fastest growing cruise port on the West Coast. We're the home port of the North Pacific fishing fleet. So anytime you eat Alaska salmon or pollock in a fish fillet, probably came through a vessel that's home ported in Seattle. We also have a whole range of industrial real estate holdings, as well as as recreational boat marina, so a really diverse holding. Port of Seattle also has a large container operation that's managed in a joint venture with the Port of Tacoma. So today, my job is to run all those businesses. In 2013, when the Port of Seattle joined Green Marine, I was the environmental director for the Maritime division at the port. And I had been, like you referenced before, so often, we care about green things, we use it as marketing. And we were really, at the time, the ports in Washington State were really focused on let's come up with a certification, kind of like maybe like LEED, but for maritime. And we were trying to put that together or search for something. And it's really difficult when we were trying to do that among the ports, having something that's both robust and sets high standards. But then everybody wants to be in it. So they're kind of pushing you to have maybe standards everybody could meet, which really isn't the goal. So we had been working at that for some time and finally said, I don't know, probably not possible. But third-party certification was very important. And then a guy named David Baldock came through Seattle and gave a presentation on Green Marine. And I personally was blown away. It was a program that was, robust, aspirational, but also all the nuts and bolts really made technical sense. And you could feel like it again was super comprehensive and stringent, and yet it really made sense because it was put together with technical involvement from the businesses involved. It also really made sense for the business. So as soon as I saw that presentation, I was like, we need to sign up. This is what this is what we have been looking for. And I will say that was now 11 years ago, and I haven't looked back. We've continued to be involved, and we consider ourselves a very green port with robust programs. But I can say we've learned, you go through the different levels that Green Marine has, and really are building blocks that can help you build programs that that really are not only aspirational, but are doing all the building blocks that you need to do. And I'll give one example. Something that we have a lot of focus on here in our region is a community outreach. And we have a super diverse community around us, many different languages spoken, for instance. So we thought on the kind of community engagement side, we're like, well, we are translating all of our materials in various languages. We're having meetings in the community. But when we went through Green Marine, we were doing the level 5 things, but there were some level 1 things we weren't doing. Namely, we at the time did not have a hotline that someone could call if they had a problem. So we were able to institute that. So while we had been doing things we thought were really cool that we could brag about, we also had some gaps that Green Marine helped us see and helped us fill those gaps. So and now that I am have transitioned to leading the business, I feel even more strongly that this is a great program.
Mark and Stephanie, I truly appreciate that. And I had a kind of a follow-up question that might seem a little bit repetitive, and I certainly don't want you to go through the same material again. But as I dug into Green Marine, one of the first things that really struck me was that the membership and the reporting is voluntary. And again, my personal experience, I've been covering the international market for 30 years. And, I would always say that for the most part, the majority of companies in this space will only do things when they are mandated by law to do it. As you all know, because you're living it, you're walking it, you're talking it every day, the marine industry globally is in a transcendent period with decarbonization, energy transition, digitalization, automation, and autonomy. That's driving a lot of purchase decisions today that are going to go on ships and boats and facilities for the next generation, basically. So again, I don't want to re-ask the same question, but as it was a voluntary gig, and Stephanie, you already kind of covered this in part. I guess, why was being a Green Marine member important? What does being a member of this Green Marine organization do that you couldn't simply do yourself?
Well, one is you could say shipping has their head in the sand, right? I would actually disagree, especially in the domestic space. I think, and especially on the Great Lakes, I think Eleanor said it early on. I think for a long time, shipping does their job quietly. We show up, and ships show up in ports like Stephanie or on the Great Lakes, at docks throughout the Great Lakes and ports in the Great Lakes, and we're dropping off 700 rail cars in a matter of 8-10 hours, right? And we leave. We don't bother your neighborhoods. We don't come through your neighborhoods. We don't make train crossings. We're not trucks driving through your neighborhood. We do this, and we're dropping off unit trains of material, or thousands and thousands of trucks worth of material. And we're doing it with you barely knowing we are actually there, right? Except that people like to come down and see big ships, but they don't understand the impact of these ships having on their communities, and actually the good impact, because we're moving material the most efficient way on ships. And I think what the big aha was, the world changed, and you could say it came through social media, it came through technology, it came just through awareness, it came through environmental issues that became bubbled up. And so, we were already proactive. We were already doing things to reduce emissions. We were doing things to work on ballast water issues. But these things are complicated. And when you're dealing with it within the large assets that we have called ships, they're not like you take a truck in and let's get a new engine in it, right? And we pull it in, pull an engine out, put it in, and go. You got a lot of things that have to come under that, and we need to educate people on that, and also show that we're doing things, because some of the changes we're doing and some of the modifications are big long-term things that have incremental impacts along the way. And it's not like we're just changing the world, we're repainting it. Now you can see the difference, and it's a different type of paint. We're doing a lot of it, and a lot of it's internal to the ship. And so you look at the ship, it doesn't look any different. And some of our ships are very long-lived assets, because we operate in the great freshwater lakes of America, of the Great Lakes. And so some of our ships are actually, if you look at them, you say, that's a pretty old boat. And in truth, they were built a long time ago, but they've been modernized. And so what we were doing is we were already doing a lot of things to reduce emissions, ballast water best practices, all these things. And I think, as Stephanie said, sometimes you signed on and you're like, whew, look at this area that we weren't doing, but we actually could easily do a few things and actually solidify it and make sure we're doing the right thing. And we were already starting our marketing. It's not marketing, but our education to the public about what we are and why we matter. And I think the important part, especially on the Great Lakes, is we matter. We change the economy of the Great Lakes. We move the economy of the Great Lakes with what we do. And people need to understand that while we do that, we also do it in actually a very environmentally friendly way. It's just that it's not always clear, and you're not always seeing them, because you'd see it also on the horizon. And so we were doing this, and we were telling our story. But to tell the story and make people believe, you also need third-party verification of what you're doing, because otherwise people do believe it's greenwashing, or it's or you're just trying to make it up to make your story look good. And that wasn't the important part. The important part is what we were doing in the path, as we, as a long-term operator and a long-term shipping company with a long-term vision, we're saying, what do we need to do to continue to be a sustainable company, not only in an environmental way, but in an economic way? And they go hand in hand. You can't be a long-term economic viable company if you're not doing things that are sustainable for the environment, for the people. Our people work, live, and play all around where we operate, in the waters of the Great Lakes. I'm out fishing. We're out on the water recreationally. We're drinking the water that comes from the Great Lakes. It's our responsibility as a company to also take care of that water around that environment, that air, and do that. And we were doing that, but we also, the problem is to do it, you got to measure it. And that's what Green Marine helps standardize the measurement. And then you got to improve upon it. And I think, so that's really where we got. And, it's easy to say shipping companies are all bad or whatever. I don't agree. I actually, you look at a lot of what's going on in the U.S., from the West Coast to East Coast in the Gulf of Mexico with alternative fuels, with other programs, ship designs. I think actually we're doing pretty amazing things in the U.S. with our domestic fleets, and we should be proud of that. But we also need to make sure that we're doing it and showing what we're doing in a way, as we've already discussed, by measuring it and showing that measurement in a consistent way. And in that way, we can benchmark ourselves against others and over time, and really, make sure people understand this is a real effort, and that the real effort's showing real results. And so
this Maritime Matters podcast is brought to you by Green Marine. Green Marine is the leading environmental certification program for the maritime industry. It is a voluntary initiative that helps ship owners, ports, terminals, and shipyards improve their environmental performance beyond regulations. Green Marine targets key environmental issues related to air, water, and soil quality, biodiversity protection, and community relations. Mark, again, you covered a lot of ground on that, and no, but just to be 100% clear, I love the maritime industry, and you are absolutely correct. There is no more efficient or environmentally benign way to deliver mass amounts of products from point A to point B, without a doubt. And we've been talking about educating the public for years. Again, just educating the public, because I just know it in my private conversations. Where I live on Long Island, I can't throw a stick without hitting some family member that has one of their children that go to one of the maritime academies. So it's pretty well ingrained here. But even just in private conversations, when you discuss this industry, people really don't understand the core root of everything that is done, everything that is brought in. And I've been on some amazing trips with the Coast Guard that were trying to highlight the importance of the maritime industry. So I'm really happy to hear that you have that initiative to educate, again, your local people, the people in your realm, about how important it is to the economy, because it is critically important to the economy. So again, Stephanie, from your side, can you add on to that?
So I was saying, we're a port city. Sea is in our very name, and yet folks don't know about the maritime industry here. Another thing that Mark said that I really want to emphasize is maritime industries, be it shipping lines or ports, we're making investments that go out 50 years. Right now, we're building new piers for our fishing vessels, 50-year lifespan. So we need to think long-term. So part of that sustainability is around environmental sustainability. If we want folks to be supporting us, and as a port, we're in the community, we need that community support, that kind of license to operate. We really need to have authentic. We need to really be doing the things that we say we're doing. And I think the idea that certainly regulations are important, and there's some businesses that you referred to, which I think is a lot fewer than it used to be, only will do things when they're required. Forward-looking companies that are looking to be successful in 50 years over the life of their investments are thinking about sustainability as well, because this is something that's now a business necessity. And if you can do it ahead of regulations, you could do it in a way that makes sense for your business. So when we're doing things, we're really incorporated in our overall operations. It can't just be a bolt-on. It has to be part of what we do. And so I think the fact that Green Marine's programs are you're talking to the executives, as you said, but there is a team of technical folks who really know the science and the operations that are designing programs to really move progress forward in a way that makes the most sense. If you wait for regulations, it may or may not be something that makes sense for your business. Being able to get ahead of things means you're doing it in a way that is that's efficient and really, I think, makes that sustainable progress.
Okay, no, Stephanie, I agree with you 1,000%. And again, we're like I said, we rattled off the decarbonization, energy transition, digitalization, autonomy, automation, whatever you want to, whichever technology you want to talk about. Clear leaders in the maritime space, people or organizations, people that are driving change. And again, this is what this Green Marine podcast is about. This is about leadership. This is about owning it, and this is kind of defining your own future without having it defined by you by some regulation then all of a sudden you have to meet. So Eleanor, with that, and again, I think you've got two executives here that have very succinctly shared their experiences and the value that they have in Green Marine. How long have you been with Green Marine personally, and this whole going to organizations and saying, hey, it's a volunteer effort for third party accreditation? How has that trip been? Is that an issue, or is it becoming less and less and less of an issue as you get bigger and bigger players that are joining your ranks and reporting their good success with it as well?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So I've been with the program for 10 years and I've seen its growth averaging over 10% per year. So it's definitely easier now, not without its growing pains, but we're doing less targeted strategic recruiting and doing more responsive, hey, welcome, come aboard, that we're able to take advantage kind of that network effect of the growing network to kind of scale and grow the program, which has been really exciting. But there's still only 24 hours in the day for anybody anywhere. And I like to say there's no shortage of good work to do, that we have kind of multiple crises of decarbonization and the need to preserve our ecosystems. And so Green Marine is very sensitive to how we really administer a program that is time efficient, that is beneficial to the environment, that really coalesces and fosters this network, really kind of all towards the mission of advancing environmental excellence. So like our challenge isn't necessarily a competitor certification, it's just the hours in the day, really. And how do we make sure that we're kind of like efficient and bringing value for our members, such that then our members become kind of our best advocates, like Mark and Stephanie are doing an amazing job of explaining why we do and who we do it for and work with.
Spectacular. So, Mark and Stephanie, just back to you for a moment, because again, like I said, I've been talking about this green initiatives for many years now. When you look out and when you look at your quote unquote crystal ball, 5 to 10 years from now, how do you see all this evolving? There are varying forces that are always pushing and pulling companies to do what they do. From your own personal perspective, though, how do you see this green marine, this green initiative in the maritime business transpiring over the coming 5 to 10 years?
Well, I can take a crack at that, Mark. So I've been in the maritime environmental world for 26 years now, and regulations don't get less strict; they get more strict. The demands for transparency, for accountability do not get less so, they get more so. And these are our maritime businesses. Essentially, we're very global, and so we have our eye on what's happening globally. That could well be the direction today of one company. I will say, if you look out 20 years, if we're going to be successful, we better be well leading the transition to new energy sources. That's just true globally, really true for the maritime business. So I do see a decarbonization and energy transition as really the biggest hurdle that we have to transition successfully. And I'm thinking about it from a business point of view myself. Like, to be successful, we need to have done that. So that to me is huge. There are also, for instance, underwater noise is a new program that at Green Marine, but it's a really big new focus here. We have endangered killer whales here in Puget Sound. That is a very, I would say, nonpartisan issue. Everybody wants to save those. And the things we can do voluntarily in ways that make sense for us, that can benefit endangered species here, that is to our benefit. I think a lot for I have been, and in this time I've been in the maritime industry, I have never seen an industry voluntarily transform so fast as I'm seeing happen in the maritime industry right now. So I think there's really great, and maybe it's what Mark said. We grow up on the water. We're there on the water. We care about the environment that we're in. And incidentally, Greg, I meant to mention I'm also a Buckeye. I grew up in Cleveland on the water of Lake Erie. So that's part of what has inspired me to be in maritime, as well as all the work I do. So anyway, I'll just stop there. But I think these are challenges that aren't going away no matter what regulations say. And even if there's momentary directions, to be successful long into the future, when our investments will still be alive, we better be looking forward and acting on these things. And that's one of the things that Green Marine really helps us do. Again, not in a greenwashy way, not in a this is frivolous, but a way that's really incorporated in doing our businesses efficiently and successfully. No one can argue with that.
Definitely a couple points there. The fact that you're a Buckeye, I had already noticed that you have a wicked keen intelligence, so I kind of figured it was that already. And again, you mentioned the whales and a nonpartisan issue, and anytime we can talk about anything that's nonpartisan, that definitely makes me happy. And just on a separate matter, offline, we'll definitely have to talk about the underwater noise, because I have a subsea title called Marine Technology Reporter, and we do a ton with underwater noise and its impacts as well. So I'll send you a copy of that as well. So Eleanor, I'm going to kind of come back to you. We've gotten some really incredible insights here of organizations that are make the Green Marine membership go. So, can you share some very basic information with us? What's the cost of participation? I think we're already hearing a lot of benefits of participation, but maybe if you want to chime in and add some of those as well. And your membership, it appears that you're growing. I mean, is it generally a stable, or is it basically a stable core of companies that you're adding people on, or do you churn through a lot of different companies?
I would say our membership, we are continually growing year on year, also diversifying with new sectors, new geographies, over 10% per year. It's our participants who are the ones who get certified. So port authorities, terminal operators, ship owners, shipyards, and the Seaway. We have really wonderful retention, 99% per year of participants going through the certification process. Their annual fee scales on the size of the organization. The full form is up on the website, somewhere between like $3K and $15K per year, plus a verification every other year. We also have partner members, which are those for-profit companies with services or products that a participant may use. Fairly good retention for our partners as well, similarly growing year on year. The two other member categories are supporters, nonprofits like governments, academics, conservation, and association members. That would also be a member-based organization. We may share members. They may have more of an advocacy mandate and be working closely with legislators with no invoice for them not to pay. We have 100% retention of them. So overall, it's a stable and growing membership and an exciting expansion now with Green Marine Europe as well. They have adopted and adapted our program for ship owners as well as for ship yards to go above and beyond the EU regulation. I think those were kind of the brass tacks questions.
Yeah, you totally did. And 99% retention is impressive. If I had that on my magazines, I'd be recording this from my yacht, but instead I'll go out on my kayak afterwards, and and we're all good. So Eleanor, again, I'm going to stick with a bit more detail here because I'm curious, and you don't have to tick off every single one, but in general, what environmental categories do you monitor, or do you rate? How do you rate them? And I guess most importantly, how do you verify that what company XYZ says is what company XYZ is doing?
Sure. Yeah, these are really important mechanics to the certification program. So we are the most comprehensive environmental scope of a maritime initiative. We're broadly covering impacts to air, land, water, including marine mammals, as well as communities. That's over 14 distinct performance indicators, where each indicator has a framework of levels 1 to 5, from monitoring of regulations to best practices, all the way up to level 5 being excellence and leadership. So it's through this kind of structure that our participants every year, through an online tool that we've invested in called the SMART Guide, conduct their self-evaluation, stepping through each performance indicator, each levels 1 through 5, checking individual criterion, yes, no, or not applicable. And then for the verification, they have to provide a justification. They have to provide documentation and evidence that the third-party verifier will check. They can also log on to the SMART Guide and have that collaborative environment to really check that the participant is doing what they said they're doing. I really liked one of the phrases of trust but verify. So that's done every other year to maintain the certification. So we have that annual accountability. We have that peer-to-peer benchmarking in the publication of results, where both the requirements and the results are available up on the website. And another consequence of that, or benefit of that, is that it provides the opportunity for those seeing what we're doing to provide us feedback to help us as a staff and a program continually improve. That we take on that mandate in addition to our participants taking on that mandate of continual improvement for their environmental performance.
That is absolutely perfect. And again, I appreciate the insights, Eleanor. So Mark and Stephanie, you've already discussed in depth the advantages that not just being a part of Green Marine, but having that green initiative resonate throughout your organization. But I was hoping that you could amplify what this commitment to Green Marine looks like in your organization, because obviously you're spending time, you're spending money, but can you kind of give me an overview on an annual basis the resources that your organizations put into this, and amplify really the high line benefits that you believe you're getting?
I mean, I think it does take a commitment, but it's a good commitment. I mean, we do have, we have a director of environment for us, and she, I think having that person on staff and is helping us give direction. Now, we didn't always do it with that individual. We did it with our team, but it aligns our team, our whole operational team, around, all right, what are we doing? How are we measuring it? What are we doing as our multi-year plan to improve and do that? And so at the end of the day, we take our long-term business goals, our 3-year, 1-year, 3-year business goals, and then we have our long-term sort of big audacious goal. And our big audacious goal is to reduce our carbon footprint dramatically by 2030. And so it aligns it, but then it also, our team now is proud of it. Our people on board vessel are proud of what we're doing, because we're able to show it, talk about it, and as we implement programs, it shows. Not only does it show just by what they do and the fact that we put the program in place, say it's increased recycling or something with a repower or something with air emission or ballast water. And we have several systems we're testing. But also then it shows the verification, because we also then can say we moved up in the numbers. We can show real results from that too. And so it lets us talk throughout our whole organization and show everyone who's working on parts of it or pieces of it, and brings it together and really shows, hey, we're making the impact. We did something really good this year, in this category and in this area, right? Or we've done really well here. We're not strong here, and it lets us refocus some of the organization going forward and say, let's work on this area, because we've been focusing so hard on other areas. And I think it does it in as we said in the beginning, in a transparent, in a uniform way. And at the end of the day, it's a great program. You got to be, you have to walk in willing to sort of, be able to be transparent. And that's always tough, because you're exposing yourself, and there's a real vulnerability it takes to do that. And you'll get some early criticisms internally or externally, but they're good ones, right? Because it's about improving, and you can't take that personally, because just by joining and by showing your results, no matter what level they're at, you've taken the first big step, right? And that's to measure and document, and then do it. And then as we've seen, our organization has evolved around it to how do we support it, not how do we comply with it, right? It's not, oh, we have to do this. It's, here's what we need, here's the resources we need, and it lets us continually focus on it in a sharper and more attentive way that's really just positive to reach our long-term goals around not only the business, but the sustainability part of it.
Mark. And separately, I'll have to reach out. I would love to connect with your director of environment and have a holistic discussion about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, Stephanie, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I will add to it. Similar to what Mark said, there's the work we do, the environmental work we do, and then there's measuring it to report to Green Marine. Hard for me to measure what time it takes to do the work, because that is the work we would be doing, right, around, be it around decarbonization or habitat or community outreach. So, and Green Marine gives us a way to validate it and measure it, but we'd be doing that work anyway. One thing I will say, real efficiency we get from Green Marine is it helps us design our program. So as I was mentioning before, when we introduced, we're trying to build an underwater noise program. It's a new program to us, so we were really able to rely on Green Marine underwater noise program to say, okay, here's the building blocks we need to have in place. I think it saved us a tremendous amount of time, so that's a real efficiency. It does take work to measure what you're doing and to report on that. Again, I think it's, as Mark said, super important, because people can, they can like it or not like it and have all kinds of opinions that are not based on reality. So being able to measure it, report on it, compare it to other maritime players, have it be, and I think that third party verified is so important. It really gives it credibility. It really validates the efforts without bias, so we know we're doing what we say we're doing, which is so important in everything we do today. So I would say, just in terms of the work is a broad organizational effort. We do have, I would say, we have one individual who spends about 2 weeks gathering all the information and reporting it. So there is that impact in terms of just the organization-wide effort.
Excellent, Stephanie. And again, I appreciate that. So, Eleanor, you are our encore. You are our final word. We've come to that magical moment. So, we've discussed it. I think the points have come out really clear. But can you, in a sentence or two, give what you see as the most compelling reason for someone listening to this, someone watching this, to contact Green Marine?
Yeah, sure. I think Mark and Stephanie have really hit on a lot of the high points of the value of Green Marine. Use us as a roadmap, as a planning tool so that you know you're reporting to best management practices backed by a very recognized standard for defining environmental performance. We're very kind of inclusive and collaborative and technical in defining our performance indicators, and these results are all third-party verified. So if you're at the beginning stages of starting an environmental program, or looking to benchmark what you're already doing, or you're a leader in the industry and you really want to be able to wave that flag, amplify your voice, and do so in a way that pulls others along, Green Marine can have a role to play. Not a one-size-fits-all solution, but in the great diversity of companies in the maritime industry, we'll be your partner in crime.
That's awesome. So, Eleanor, Stephanie, and Mark, I genuinely appreciate your time. Everyone's busy these days, but I think this is such an important topic. I appreciate your time, and I personally look forward to following up on the Green Marine story as it goes throughout the years. Thank you for listening to Maritime Matters. If you would like to be featured on a future Maritime Matters podcast, visit www.marinelink.com or email maritimematters@marinelink.com.